Originally, I was going to wait to make this video because I had this whole idea of making a Final Fantasy 16 themed thumbnail of Clive. I even sketched it already, but then I had some issues with YouTube. Well, not YouTube, but Sony. There's a song that plays during the credits for Final Fantasy 16, and that one song is owned by Sony, not Square, and it flagged my entire video. I appealed to have the copyright removed because it's a song that was put into a video game and it played as intended in the video game, and the video is obviously marked as Final Fantasy 16 gameplay, so by logic that is fair use. It's very likely it's an AI thing since stuff like that is usually automated. It just sucks that the handling of it is also likely automated. So both appeals I made for the video got denied, then my whole video got removed completely, and I even have a copyright strike over this on my channel. I got it literally today. That's why my final part for FF16 is no longer up. I have sent yet another appeal, but we'll see how that goes. Either way, that killed my drive in so many ways. I know it's really not that serious considering I'm such a small nothing burger platform, but it still sucks when I'm someone who really does want this to be something. So I'm not really interested in making a custom thumbnail for this at the moment. In the future, I might, but right now, no. But that doesn't mean I don't want to not make a yap video about the game I love by the company I adore, as in Square Enix, obviously not Sony. I love Square Enix. So it will be like the Elliot one, with the only difference being I have some gameplay for you guys to look at this time for a game I can't really say I like, for reasons I talk about on my stream a lot whenever someone asks about how Solateria is going or whatever. But I might as well use some of my own gameplay from it as a backdrop. Still though, I'm sorry about not making the thumbnail. I have a lot going on in terms of my mental health being pretty bad currently because of some personal stuff, so something this small did kind of hit harder than it should when, you know, I already feel like a baby fawn, trembling on my frail little legs, trying to find my way in life. Anyway, enough of that. Time for the topic of the video. Final Fantasy XVI. If it wasn't apparent already given how I speak about anything Square Enix, I love the company, I love their games, I love their art, I love their dabbling with anime at times. Shout out, by the way, to the Kingdom Hearts series announced literally yesterday. Very excited about that. So naturally, Final Fantasy 16 was exactly up my alley. I am a little late to the party considering it came out in 2023 and here I am playing this gem in 2026. But honestly, as a person, I'm glad I played it. Oh, sorry. I'm glad I played it now instead of 3 years ago. I think my love for the company and series as a whole has only deepened over the years, and my ability to digest it has also only improved, like in terms of how things make me feel, how I carry things from games with me, and just like the meaning of everything. I seriously think that's gotten better over the years, so I do think that's another reason why I'm glad I played it now instead of back then, because I just feel like it resonated better now and it struck deeper now than it could have 3 years ago. The game itself was a beautiful experience. Story-wise, I am still a little shocked that there is a Final Fantasy universe where magic was so harmful it needed to be eradicated, and the villain for the story was the same ultimate spell I'd be so excited to get since the birth of the series. Like, every single time I'd play pixel Final Fantasy games, I'd always be like, oh my god, Ultima's so pretty. Then in 6 especially, which is my favorite Final Fantasy game, there's this forest you can go into to farm something called the Celestial Ring. And what the Celestial Ring did was it would make it so every spell you cost only 1 MP, and I was kind of a psycho, so I would go into that forest and I would farm 4 of those rings and I would equip it on 4 of my characters, and I'd go into the final gauntlet for Final Fantasy VI with only 4 characters. You can use multiple parties if like your party dies or whatever. I just do it with 4 because I'd have Celestial Ring and just nuke everything with Ultima over and over and over again, just because it was like my millionth time playing, and you know, why not have fun? But yeah, sidetrack, I'm sorry. Anyway, there's so much I want to talk about, so I will try to cut out a lot of this, or this video will genuinely be 6 hours long. Minimum. Oh god, where do I even start? Just like with Elliot, I'm not reading off a script or planning this at all. I like keeping this pretty raw, like a vocal diary in a sense, but I should try to still have some sort of structure. It'll help with my oration skills with streaming too, since that's, of course, you know, live. I guess something I can start with is the music, since that, to me at least, well, it's really not a secret. I think a lot of people can agree that music is a huge pillar for Square Enix as a whole, and something they pull off perfectly, even for, say, a song that's under a minute long, like Rebirth and Hope from Nier Automata and Continue from the original Final Fantasy VII. Both of those are, I'm pretty sure, under 40 seconds. Like, they're a few seconds short of it. I could be wrong, but I know for sure they're under a minute. They're pretty short. Either way, the beautiful songs. You could even say the chocobo jingle that plays when you initially mount your chocobo is extremely iconic for starters and recognizable across all Final Fantasy games, even though they're different enough for you to be like, hey, that's a chocobo theme from Final Fantasy V, or that's from 6, or, you know, whatever. With 16 specifically, I loved how full circle everything came with the music. My two favorite examples of it have to be Ultima and Titan. With Titan, you had the 3 songs. Oh god, sorry. With I lost my train of thought. With Titan, you had 3 songs, that's it. You had 3 songs. You had King of the World, where Hugo was lamenting over Benedicta's death, and you hear elements of that song again when you actually fight Titan in Titan Lost, and then again the same elements come to a climax. Oh god. They come to a climax in Heart of Stone during the latter stages of that fight with Titan. It's so cool to me how the music carried through hand in hand with the story, and those 3 songs are so dramatically different, but you can still listen to all 3 of them and draw a bridge between them and group them as Titan or Hugo songs in Final Fantasy XVI just because of those elements that they share. With Ultima, it does a similar thing with a song I refuse to pronounce out of fear of butchering it, but it's the song that starts with Kata. It's a pretty long name, but it starts with Kata. You hear it during your first actual encounter with Ultima, and it appears in bits sprinkled throughout the game, and of course in full blast again during the penultimate clash with big scary demented god guy. There are other moments as well. The music stuck out a lot to me in Final Fantasy XVI, but I think I can chalk that up to a phrase I say a lot at this point, of it just being classic Square Enix. Like, when cutscenes would play and you'd hear what I call the traditional Final Fantasy theme, it would swell here and there, and me being as soft as, ow, my elbow, as soft as I am, it would make me tear up or straight up cry. I love how it was woven into the scores of the game, which in my eyes was at the perfect moments. But I think that's all I want to say for the music, just to not have this video be so long people don't click on it because it's over an hour long, for example. I'm really hoping by the time I'm done speaking, this isn't an hour long, or that's going to be very awkward. Anyway, another topic I wanted to touch on is side quests. I don't want to go too much into this one because it is one that's included in the stream VODs for the game, and I'll likely end up talking about it on numerous occasions on my stream because it is something that gets brought up sometimes in my community, either in my Discord or people live in my Twitch chat. And bottom line is, I obviously disagree with the sentiment that I hear about Square Enix and side quests. The sentiment being Square is bad at side quests and they're not getting any better at it. I think their world building is phenomenal. Even if you're doing a fetch quest, for example, I, as someone who adores lore and details, love it. It comes full circle, and most of the side quests, not just in 16, but across Square, make me cry. It's either sweet, romantic, bittersweet, or plain sad, and, you know, a couple other emotions like straight up dread, fear, loss, whatever. But I do understand the argument of wanting fresh enemies in those side quests, for example, like people who are like, oh, I'm just fighting the same people I've been seeing the entire game, or I'm just fighting the same dragon, or whatever. I do understand that point, but In context to 16, for example, I think it makes sense to have similar enemies to show the negative impact of Ultima and magic on the world than pulling random new enemies just for the sake of being new and fun or whatever. I also think the game has enough content through the hunting boards and the main story for a player to be satisfied with the roster of enemies. I I think they did a really good job at giving you enough to just be like, yeah, this is pretty cool, especially with the trials. You can do the trials and everything to go through gauntlets of enemies, and I don't know. I personally think it's fine. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. And plus, with the whole Akashic thing, you can really see again, the impact on everything. I think you pull away from world building by just having a constant flux of random enemies, because you'll just sit there and be like, that was very cool, but how does this fit into the world that I've been experiencing the entire time? So I personally think that's an irrelevant complaint. I just feel like people just want that, I don't know, that, what's the word? I'm like blanking. Dopium? That's it. Dopium of just being like, oh my god, cool enemy, let's run this down. I also think fighting the same enemy, for me at least, the bigger enemies, helped me get better because I would actually memorize the movesets and, you know, rely on my skill instead of just spamming spells. But I'll get into that a little bit later on. I think no, that's it. Moving on, my favorite side quest in 16 was hands down Jill's side quest towards the end of the game after she gives Clive her Shiva powers. It was called Priceless. The whole premise of the quest was essentially after giving away her powers, Jill started to, she didn't say it, but you could tell with how she was acting, where she would pull away from everyone, and she was not in a dreamy state, but a distant state. And Joshua's actually the one who picks up on it. I'm sure Clive noticed, but Joshua's the one who vocalizes it, and he basically nudges Clive to go talk to his beloved Jill, essentially. But anyway, it was called Priceless, and it basically was saying that she is priceless to Clive, obviously, and also the Hideaway, even without those powers. Like, she doesn't need to prime and be Shivan and do all that to be important to Clive primarily, and secondly, or whatever, to the Hideaway. It was so beautiful. I cried so much during that quest. You had Square's classic message through flowers, which I've spoken about so many times. I even tweeted about it at one point. Square Enix loves using flowers to tell beautiful stories. Like, you have Aerith with her flowers in 7, you have the flowers in Nier in Replicant, and also in Automata as well. You have, they're not really flowers actually, they're more so stars. I was going to mention Kingdom Hearts, but it doesn't really count. I guess you could say the star fruit, that's also not a flower. And then there's the flowers in Elliot. There's so many examples of flowers. Square Enix just loves being very well written with even flowers. But anyway, you had in the side quest, you had tender moments between the couple of Jill and Clive. You even had Torgal to the side just lounging in the flowers. It was very, very, very pretty. But yeah, I won't get too much into that. Bottom line, statement wrong, Square good, trust Illuma. Anyway, I think next on the list, I should probably talk about combat. I heard some people say they didn't like the combat for 16, but I don't think I should listen to that comment. Mostly because one of them said they don't like turn-based combat, and 16 isn't turn-based at all. But anyway, I like the combat a lot. My endgame wheel for the game ended up being Titan on my very first one. I quite literally not once removed Titan. The second I unlocked it, it was on my rotation permanently because I just love parrying or countering. My best friend even calls me the parry princess because of how much I've liked parrying basically my entire gaming career. My second thing on the wheel was Ultima. My middle wheel, I actually changed a lot since I was so comfortable with Titan and didn't really vibe with the other ones until I got Ultima. The form you take is just very fun, and I found a very consistent DPS rotation once Ultima was added. It was Garuda for a huge part of the game for my second wheel, then briefly Shiva because the Everfrost mechanic was very fun. It was so weird because I had Shiva equipped, but I had Ramu spells. I had the Rod of Lightning thing and the big, I don't know any of the spell names for the most part, but the big boom spell that you do where you just rain down lightning and it does buttload of damage. I had that spell on. But yeah, I switched to Ultima the second I unlocked it because it was just really fun. I was cool. I had wings and claws and lasers. Like, sign me up. That was my second wheel. The second I got it, it was very fun. I loved it. It was also really good for ad clearing because when you're in that form, you can actually float and get rid of aerial enemies a lot better, and you can also group enemies a lot better with like the sweeping motions and the claws and everything. So I really like that. My third was Odin. Like my second, my third I also rotated quite a bit. It was Ramu for a huge part of the game. I didn't really like his feet though, like at all. I tried Bahamut, I also didn't like it. I got Odin and I slapped it on and the rest was history. Odin was actually my hardest hitter for pure DPS because his iconic feat fully charged did crazy damage. It was the bread and butter for my DPS. Like, if I did not pull that off, I am not hitting over 100k. I'm like barely hitting 100k. I was hitting 100k even without it, but with that, it's like easily guaranteed minimum 100k. It was great. But outside of the DPS phases, the way I play, I don't really like spamming spells. That was apparent throughout my entire gameplay. If you like watch any of it, you'll literally never see me spamming spells. And I even comment on it when I feel like I'm spamming and I correct it immediately. Like when I feel like I was using the Titanic block too much just because I was scared of a hit, I'd be like, oh man, I shouldn't be doing that, I'm spamming. Or I'd say, the important part is I didn't take damage because I would use it too early and it would just be a counter. You wouldn't get the parry phase of it. But anyway, that's just how I as a person like to play. Even though I love magic, for example, I never spam spells. I find a lot more fun in doing combos, parrying, figuring out mechanics. That kind of thing is more me. Fights may take longer doing that, but I have more fun and I do get a little self-conscious about it when I'm streaming. So at times when I play, I do apologize for it and explain exactly that, where I'll be like, this is just how I like to play. I'm sorry if it's irritating, if anyone isn't enjoying it. I can do this and this, but you know, that's just how I am. Final Fantasy 16 though, I do have to say, felt fluid in that sense. It felt like I could play how I like to play, with the only drawback being fights are longer, which honestly I don't really mind because it's more practice and more of a test if I actually know an enemy's moveset, if I can counter or parry consistently. And I'd get so excited when I did parry, not counter with the Titanic block thing, unless it was like a really juicy one where I'd be like, oh, that was so good, I'm her or whatever. But like actually parrying. Parrying in 16 works by attacking at the same time and attacked with connect with Clive. And I would get so audibly happy every time it happened. It was fun. It felt good. So I do combos, parry, counter until the stance broke. That is when I do a DPS dump. Only time I'd really use spells was when an enemy's stance was broken, and later on in my gameplay, I did start using just one spell when an enemy was halfway just to get more stance damage in, since elite enemies do semi-stagger once their stance is halfway and full stagger once it's completely gone. Oh, I do also think the game is very accessible combat wise, or I guess skill wise, for various skill types. I never used any of them, but the game does have accessories to help you. Like, I think it was called oh, sorry, that was that was my mic I think it was called the Ring of Focus. It gives you a pop-up when you should dodge before something hits you. I did see a video of someone using it. It tells you like it literally pops up like a quick time event, has like a little wheel on it, and you press RB and then you dodge, which I think is baby mode, but it's there if you need it. If you need it, it's there. And there was another one you get during the first DLC, I want to say. I might be wrong, but it's during one of the DLCs. I forgot what it's called, but it basically tells you if an enemy is parryable, because I don't know if it said it turns the enemy's health bar or name purple, or if it just says it changes the color. Whatever, either way, it tells you that they're parryable when that changes, and you just basically press the attack button if your timing is good, I assume. I don't think there's a pop-up for that one. I've never used it, nor have I seen anyone use it, so I don't know how that one works exactly. Anyway, there's also difficulties in the game, like you have story focus, so it's easier and you can blow through enemies if you're higher leveled or whatever, or your gear and all that stuff. Or you have action focused, which makes it so things scale better, so you don't feel overpowered. And then of course you have Final Fantasy mode, which only unlocks once you beat the game the first time. I did do it and I loved it. I got all the achievements, and hopefully Editing Luma can put a screenshot of that in here now. That being said, I did have very minor complaints about gameplay. First one is a complaint and a compliment. It's a compliment because some games are really bad, or usually really bad, at camera movement on bosses that are too big for the screen. 16 didn't have that issue for the most part. The Titan fight, for example, which I think has to be one of my favorite fights for the entire game, the guy was huge, but the camera was designed to flow hand in hand with the boss, and it was honestly immaculate given the sheer size of Titan, so I have no complaints. But some of the fights, the dragon fights specifically, and all the behemoth fights, like you had the main behemoth fight and like lesser behemoth fights, those drove me insane because they all had the same problem. The camera became a hidden boss for me during those, and I do wish that was handled a little better, especially when there are so many big enemies in the game that didn't have that issue, so it felt like a little bit of an oversight. Another issue coupled with that would be enemies backing me into a corner. Please stop. I'm just a little lady, and it sucked being wombo comboed into the stars like I was fighting Bahamut in space all over again. Bahamut was some D-tier enemy on Earth, and space was the corner, and Clive was tied up and taking it like a good boy in said corner. My last combat issue, actually no, there's two more, but one of the last one is there's this circle that appears around enemies when you fight them on the open world fights, and if the enemy goes beyond that circle, or you do, the fight resets. It happened to me so many times. The boss would be on such low HP, you could blow the softest kiss in existence towards it and it would shatter and wither into the void. That ring feature just screwed me over at least 8 times. It especially sucked because, you know, I'm stubborn when it comes to gameplay, and in my head, X thing unlocked equals Luma can beat X thing. So my first S-class fight, I was like level 30 and bro was 45 or something. I don't know. I beat him, but it sucked when he reset. I was getting so close and the fight would reset, and poor little level 30 me was crying in the corner, but I did get through it. It was great. Anyway, so I would really like them to adjust that feature or just remove it. If people get scared in the fight, too bad. Suck it up. You never know. Try it. You might surprise yourself. Or maybe just fine-tune it, or I don't know. I just don't like the feature. And my last complaint about combat, which is kind of a user issue now that I'm thinking about it, was the quick time events. When there's this thing that pops up when you need to just flat DPS something, and it's called press the attack, and it stressed me out so bad. But I say it's a user issue just because I as a person get really stressed out by timers, so seeing that just never felt good for me. So again, might be able to borrow this one. That might just be a loser issue. Oh my god, I meant user issue, sorry. That might just be a user issue. It especially upset me during Leviathan, because there's this one phase with Leviathan where you have to do the press the attack thing, and if you fail, you obviously wipe, and it was so tight timing wise that I don't even know how I pulled it off. I felt every sinew, every vein, every blood cell in my arm activate, and it felt like I hit arm day during that. Just I had to be perfect. I couldn't get hit by anything or I'd be staggered and I have to close the distance again, and it was a lot. Didn't like that, but again, that might be a user issue. Moving on. Finally, because I really don't want to make this too long, because again, I could talk about this or anything I care about for days. Story. Let's wrap this up on story. Obviously, it's a Square Enix game. Story was incredible. I said around an 8th into the game. That is definitely a lot darker than previous Final Fantasy games, but at the same time, I'm not really sure that's the case. I just think it can feel that way since it's one of their few Final Fantasy games on such a high quality level, like with graphics and stuff. I mean, think about it. In Final Fantasy IV, you have Cecile, who killed innocent people with his own hands, and when he started to think about everything he was doing, he wanted to stop. And he was essentially sent on a suicide mission once his worth to the Empire or Emperor expired, and he was then faced with one of his own victims who then became his own teammate, and she had to accept that the man she walks beside now killed her own mother. You have Terra in Final Fantasy VI, who was a slave for the Empire and abused to the point of memory loss. You even have villains across the games who have their own baggage that make you question the depth of their villainy, or if it's just they were broken under their own grief, with examples like Sephiroth, who even questions his own existence. But I feel like Sephi might be a less relevant example given the remake being so new, so that's also high quality Final Fantasy. I'm just mentioning it because you obviously have the original Final Fantasy. I guess I could say Kefka, because Kefka does have these points where during the final fight he starts to question everything, and it's one of the reasons why I think it's a stupid comment for people to say the last fight for Final Fantasy is easy, because you have the whole gauntlet thing that feels very biblical, and then you have Kefka who's kind of a pushover. But I feel like that was intentional because of the internal dialogue that he has in that moment, but that's a completely different topic. The point is, there's a lot of older examples for dark topics and really grim stuff in Final Fantasy. My throat hurts from talking so much. Forgive me. Sorry. Anyway, Final Fantasy 16 definitely is dark, but I don't think it's something new. It's just a lot more graphic and prominent given the resources available now for making that kind of game. It doesn't mean in any sense that it wasn't good. It obviously was. I love the story. It's still so crazy to me the villain was Ultima. They made him God, the creator of humans, entirely for selfish gain, and treated them as less than an afterthought. Sorry, I've been talking too much. Anyway, the humans dared develop their own wills. How dare they? So now instead of living with God or Ultima in paradise, humans serve to achieve that paradise for him at the cost of themselves. For the sake of video length, I won't get too much into the base game story unless maybe I do a part 2 on this, who knows. But I will say something about the DLCs. The DLCs came out pretty close to one another. Echoes of the Fallen, which was the first DLC, came out in December 2023, the same year the game came out. The Rising Tides came out in April 2024, just a few months after. The DLCs actually tie into each other really well, actually. Echoes introduces a tribe of outcasts and a particular phase that's even related to the main new character of the second DLC called Shula. The second DLC literally unveils a town Final Fantasy players would recognize. You have Mysidia in the second Final Fantasy 16 DLC. My chat knows I was so happy the second I saw the name Mysidia on my screen. I audibly packed up and was so excited to see Mysidia out of just pure nostalgia, and just because in classic FF, Mysidia was the magic town in Final Fantasy filled with elven mages. Were they? I guess it's just better to say sages, because they were sometimes cloaked people. So yeah, sages, magic sages, basically. Anyway, irrelevant. I like the DLCs. It was really interesting to see how different Mysidia functioned and how they had more freedom in some parts, but treachery in others all the same. Bearers weren't slaves in Mysidia. Joshua even comments on it a little bit, because when you first see Shula fight, she uses magic, and Shula actually says it herself. She's like, "Oh, you're surprised, aren't you? I don't have a single crystal on me." And then Joshua goes, "You're a bearer, but where's your mark?" And they get into that a little bit. The bearers were free in a sense, but not everyone got that privilege, basically. The second DLC introduces a new icon with Leviathan, and Leviathan's dominant was just a baby that was forced to prime by its own clan, so Shula's ancestors. And when Leviathan realized what was going on, he rebelled, and those ancestors then used Shiva's power to freeze the baby in time, and then kind of just left him there for over a century. Shula's the one who wanted to free him, so she contacts Clive, and then Clive comes along and frees him, and, you know, ton of other stuff. It's a very quick summary, but it was very well executed. Obviously, not my summary. The actual DLC was very well executed. There's so much I want to say, but it's gonna be so long. But yeah, I'm gonna stop it there. I think that's where I should leave it for, like, just a post playing Final Fantasy 16 yap. I think this is a good place to stop it. Just since this is something new that I'm trying out, I don't even know if I'm going to continue doing them. I don't know if anyone likes me doing them. I don't know if this will ever, like, be anything. I hope it's something. I like talking like this. I want this to be something, but we'll see. I'll do a part 2 if this ever blows up, or if enough people ask, which I guess is the same as blowing up. But please, shameless plug time, please follow me on my Twitch. It's twitch.tv/lumafey, as in LUMAFEY, if you want to see me stream live, or you can subscribe here on YouTube. But Twitch is kind of my priority for content, especially with, like, the whole copyright thing. I'm a little bit scared about YouTube right now. But I am consistent on Twitch, and if for whatever reason I won't be able to stream, I do let my chat know when I'm live, or if something happens after I'm done streaming, I let people know in my Discord server, which I will also link in the description. So please be a part of the star system if you want to be. And yeah, I appreciate you all. I'll see everyone soon, hopefully. Yeah, goodbye.